23 million people live in a state that is, geologically speaking, a bad idea. It's the flattest state in America. It's mostly a drained swamp. The ground underneath it is slowly dissolving. It gets hit by more hurricanes and more lightning than anywhere else in the country, and yet 1,000 people move there every single day. These are 50 Florida facts that prove this state shouldn't exist and explain why it does anyway. 1. For most of Earth's history, Florida didn't exist. The entire peninsula spent millions of years underwater, which is why the whole state sits on a platform of limestone made from ancient compressed sea life. 2. That limestone has a problem. It dissolves in rainwater. The technical term is karst terrain. The practical term is the ground sometimes opens up and eats things. 3. That's why Florida is America's sinkhole capital. In 1981, a sinkhole in Winter Park swallowed a public swimming pool, parts of 2 streets, and 5 Porsches from a dealership lot in one day. 4. Florida is one of the only states where you can buy sinkhole insurance, and in some counties, lenders effectively expect it. 5. The same dissolving rock created something beautiful. Florida has one of the largest concentrations of freshwater springs on the planet. More than 1,000 of them. 6. Beneath it all is the Floridan Aquifer, an underground freshwater system so massive it supplies drinking water to roughly 10 million people. 7. Florida is the flattest state in America, not Kansas. Florida. 8. Its highest natural point, Britton Hill, is 345 feet, the lowest high point of any state. There are buildings in Miami more than twice as tall as Florida's tallest hill, 9. Almost nobody in Florida has a basement. Dig down a few feet in much of the state and you hit water, 10. And the famous white sand, most of it isn't even from Florida. It's quartz, washed down from the Appalachian Mountains over millions of years. Siesta Key sand is roughly 99% quartz, which is why it stays cool in the sun. 11. Florida is the lightning capital of the United States. The corridor between Tampa and Orlando is literally nicknamed Lightning Alley. 12. Florida also leads the nation in lightning deaths. The afternoon thunderstorm isn't an event there, it's a schedule. 13. Roughly 40% of all hurricanes that hit the United States hit Florida. 14. The deadliest one you've never heard of. The 1928 Okeechobee hurricane killed more than 2,500 people when the lake burst through its dike. One of the deadliest natural disasters in American history. 15. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew flattened entire neighborhoods south of Miami and rewrote America's building codes. Modern Florida construction law exists because of one storm. 16. And here's the geographic trap. No point in Florida is more than about 60 miles from saltwater. When a hurricane comes, there is nowhere in the state that's truly far from the coast. 17. Florida has roughly 1,350 miles of coastline, more than any state except Alaska. Paradise and exposure are the same fact. 18. Despite being the sunshine state, Tampa gets a thunderstorm roughly 1 out of every 4 days of the year. 19. The Everglades is not a swamp. It's a river, 60 miles wide and only inches deep, flowing so slowly you can't see it move. Scientists call it the river of grass. 20. It is the only ecosystem of its kind on Earth. There is no second Everglades anywhere. 21. It's also the only place on the planet where alligators and crocodiles live side by side. 22. A century ago, Florida decided to drain it. Today, roughly half of the original Everglades is gone, converted to farmland and suburbs. Much of greater Miami sits on former wetland. 23. The restoration effort underway now is one of the largest environmental engineering projects in human history, spending billions of dollars to undo what earlier Floridians spent decades doing on purpose. 24. Meanwhile, the Everglades has been invaded. Tens of thousands of Burmese pythons, descendants of escaped and released pets, have wiped out the majority of small mammals in parts of the park. 25. Florida's response: an annual public python hunt with cash prizes. That's a real government program. 26. The Florida panther, the state animal, is one of the most endangered big cats in the world. Only a couple hundred remain, almost all in and around the Everglades. 27. Lake Okeechobee, the liquid heart of the system, is the largest lake in the southeastern United States, and on a map, it looks like Florida's missing eye. 28. And the coastline is guarded by mangrove forests, trees that grow in salt water and act as natural storm walls. Every mile of mangroves Florida removes, it pays for later in hurricane damage. 29. St. Augustine, Florida, is the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States, founded in 1565, more than 40 years before Jamestown. 30. Florida is older than the United States, but it joined it late. Spain handed Florida to the U.S. in 1819 in a deal where America essentially paid $5 million to its own citizens, settling their claims against Spain. 31. In 1900, Florida was one of the least populated states in the South, for around 500,000 people. Today, it's the third most populous state in America. That's not growth, that's an explosion. 32. What made it possible? Air conditioning. And fittingly, a Florida doctor, John Gorey of Apalachicola, patented one of the first mechanical cooling machines back in 1851, trying to cool down fever patients. 33. Miami is the only major American city founded by a woman. Julia Tuttle owned the land and convinced railroad tycoon Henry Flagler to extend his tracks south. 34. Flagler then did something insane. He built a railroad over the open ocean to Key West. They called it the eighth wonder of the world, until the 1935 Labor Day hurricane tore it apart. 35. Key West is closer to Cuba, about 90 miles, than it is to Miami. 36. Gatorade was invented at the University of Florida in 1965 to keep the football team from collapsing in the heat. The team's name? The Gators, hence Gatorade. 37. One of Florida's original counties was literally named Mosquito County. They eventually rebranded. Smart move. 38. Walt Disney World is roughly 25,000 acres, about twice the size of Manhattan. It has its own special governing district and for decades effectively operated like its own municipality. 39. Orlando is one of the most visited tourist destinations on Earth, more than 70 million visitors in a typical year. The state that shouldn't exist is the place the entire world goes on vacation. 40. Florida grows the majority of America's oranges, even though citrus isn't native and the industry is now fighting for its life against a bacterial disease called citrus greening. 41. Cape Canaveral is America's front door to space. Almost every crewed mission in U.S. history, including every Apollo moon launch, left Earth from Florida's coast. Why? It's far south, closer to the equator means a free speed boost from Earth's rotation, and any failed launch falls into open ocean. 42. Florida has no state income tax, one of the engines behind the migration boom. 43. That boom is real. In recent years, Florida has gained on the order of 1,000 new residents per day. 44. Meanwhile, Miami now floods on sunny days. King tides push seawater up through the limestone and storm drains. No rain required. The porous rock that makes sinkholes also means you can't build a seawall against water that comes from below. 45. Venice. Florida calls itself the shark-tooth capital of the world. The seafloor offshore is loaded with millions of fossilized teeth because remember, all of Florida used to be ocean. 46. Florida is one of the only places in mainland America with a living coral barrier reef, the third largest barrier reef system in the world. 47. Manatees, the state's beloved sea cows, cluster in Florida's springs every winter because the spring water stays a constant 72 degrees. The dissolving rock that threatens the houses is the same rock that saves the manatees. 48. The state has more golf courses than any other state, built on drained wetland, watered from the aquifer in the lightning capital of America. Florida, in one sentence, 49. And the population keeps climbing toward 23 million on a peninsula where the highest point is shorter than a football field. 50. So here's the truth. Florida shouldn't exist. The ground dissolves, the sky attacks, the ocean is rising, and half the state was underwater a geological eye blink ago. And yet it's the fastest growing big state in America because humans decided paradise was worth the risk. So here's what I want to know, and be honest. Knowing what you now know about the ground Florida is actually built on, the sinkholes, the storms, the water rising from below, would you still move there? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. And if you think Florida is extreme, wait until you see the state where 60% of the land is completely off limits to the public. That video is right here. Subscribe if you want the next one. We're covering Texas next, the state that's basically its own country. And some of these facts sound illegal.